Welcome to Edge of Intelligence, where we dig into how AI, automation, and data strategy intersect with business value. I'm Carl Owen, a fractional CIO and AI advisor at Proteligen. Today, I'm excited to welcome Jim Harenchar, CEO of RMG Response Marketing Group. Jim leads a data-first marketing and analytics firm that helps organizations understand how customers optimize campaigns and turn insights into action. Over decades, he's built a reputation for bringing rigor, modeling, and predictive power into marketing. Jim, thanks for joining.
Well, thank you, Carl. Good to be with you.
Glad to have you. So to kick us off, can you share your origin story or how you came to form RMG and what gap in marketing or analytics did you set out to fill with the approach?
Yeah, so I joined the firm in 1994. It was started in 1986. So I'm not an original founder. As many people may or may not recall, back at that time, there were really only two direct-to-consumer channels. There was telemarketing and there was direct mail. And so we were at the advent of the explosion of direct mail, especially in the financial services industry. And so the founders had a vision for really the unique value proposition that RMG would fill for our clients was the ability to be able to identify the most likely responders in direct mail campaigns. So applying both data that clients had or data that they didn't have, we would overlay or append those demographics and other various psychographics attributes on top of client data to be able to build predictive models that allowed us to estimate or with some sense of certain rigor who was likely to respond to a campaign, who was not, based on existing customers. And so where we had a client that might want to mail 1 million pieces of credit card acquisition mail, we would say by building a model using the various demographics and overlaying on your existing clients, so basically clone models as we call them today, we'd be able to predict the response likelihood and thereby reducing the overall cost of the campaign. So reduce your print cost, mail 500,000 pieces instead of 1 million, increase your response rate, thereby driving a much better return on your spend and a better ROI. So that was really our kind of differentiator in the marketplace, in ingesting all of that data, being able to use that data from a predictive analytics perspective. And we had a tremendous run from 1986 to 1999 when the firm was sold the first time. So we grew an agency to 330 people, $52 million in revenue. Were sold to the gentleman who happened to own the Washington Redskins at the time and rolled us up to be part of a much larger holding company that was focused on direct marketing.
Makes perfect sense. Well, in marketing, the promises are often really big, right? So data-driven personalization and machine learning type things, but the tangible difference comes down to clarity, measurement, and execution. So let's dig into how you're positioning RMG to deliver that in practice.
Sure. So go ahead if you want to narrow that a bit, if there's a specific element.
Well, yeah, I kind of throw out another question here. So how do you describe RMG's mission and positioning today versus earlier days? And what kinds of clients or problems energize you most?
Well, I would say the first thing that we have to acknowledge is the fact that, as I mentioned, back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were only two direct-to-consumer channels. Today, there's probably 20. And you factor in things like influencers and others that are varying degrees of direct-to-consumer. Nonetheless, they're all providing some value and building some awareness and driving some customer, whether that's to your website predominantly or to a retail outlet. So I think, Carl, where we've really pivoted is to say that recognizing that the number of channels has exploded. At the end of the day, still, if you are a marketer or you are a for-profit organization trying to build awareness for your entity, you need to measure the effectiveness of the marketing spend that you have, because we all have finite budgets, right? Certainly, GE's marketing budget is not the same as a small independent bank with 2 branches located somewhere in the United States. So what we want to do is clearly define for our clients that return on ad spend and ROI in general should be the predictor and the driving force that you use to measure success of your campaigns. Building awareness is fantastic. We all need to do that because, as my old business partner used to say, you can't choose something that you don't know exists. So awareness is what drives it all. And we believe that general ad agencies do spectacular jobs of creating brands and building that awareness. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to sell something. If that's the business that you're in, you need people to walk through your door or people to visit your website. How do you evaluate the success of the marketing budget that you have and make it more effective if it is not effective. And you need measurement tools to do that. And so that's what we are attempting to provide to the marketplace.
So, in your view, what sets RMG apart from many analytics or ad agencies that also tout data driven as their different?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer that, but before I do, I will preface it by saying there was a period of time for about 10 years when I owned a general ad agency,
Hmm.
and we like to call that moving to the dark side in the direct marketing business. But I did that for a period of time, and was really valuable for me to be able to understand how ad agencies make money. And I won't go into that. That's a separate lecture for another time. But it's typically driven by hourly rates and the number of people that you can put on a project, and delivering a variety of resources, which are all extremely valuable for the client: media buying, creative development, copywriting, all of those different things. What we feel like our real differentiator is we've been fortunate over the 39 years. In October, we just celebrated 39 years at RMG. And so
Congratulations.
thank you. What's different for us is the fact that we use all these data analytics, we hold ourselves accountable, and we provide clear measurement tools for our clients to be able to assess the success of their campaigns. Now, that's built, and this is what I think is a differentiator over some of those others that you mentioned. We built all this on a foundation of 150 million US database. So we have 2/3 of the United States population where we are appending demographics. And that's 350 to 400 demographics, things like age, income, presence of children. It is publicly sourced. And so we're not in immediate dealing with PII. We're dealing with self-reported information that consumers have provided from a variety of resources that are all publicly available. So we have this robust database that has become our benchmark and platform for being able to drive these results and to measure the campaign results and to enhance the performance of campaigns. Because now, as opposed to taking your street or mine, Carl, there may be 10 homes on the street. And if we were to do an outbound direct mail campaign that was driven purely by zip code, everybody on that street is going to receive the same marketing communications, regardless of what channel we're talking about, whether that's direct mail, whether that's social, targeted programmatic advertising, whatever the case might be. In reality, not all 10 of us that live on that street look alike. Some are empty nesters, some have families with very young kids. Marketing and advertising needs to be targeted at an individual, which drives greater response and thereby a better ROI. And so that's what we believe is the critical differentiator that RMG has been able to establish versus both our peers that are also similar to RMG. Certainly a big differentiator versus ad agencies who may say, well, we're following impressions and we get this number of clicks. And that's fantastic. It's a good thing that you did. But that's not really a measure of success. If your goal is to sell something, or we do a lot of work in the tourism industry, if it's to get someone to come and visit your destination, likes and clicks are a wonderful measure of awareness, but that doesn't mean that Jim Harenchar ever steps foot into your town.
Well, over the years, how has your core service model evolved? Is it through the use of predictive models, segmentation, visitor intelligence?
I think it's twofold. I think first, it's certainly in our early days, our modeling was not rudimentary. It was probably better than most in the marketing industry, but it has advanced. And I know this is near and dear to your heart. One of the things that AI provides is it lends us the ability to be able to manage and to certainly view data at scale. So whereas in the past, our clients might have a finite set of data internally, and we could augment that data, it was still somewhat limited based on the budget that they had available, the horsepower that they had to be able to build models and analyze that data. Today, with AI, we can do that literally in minutes, if not faster. And so now we're looking at much broader data sets. We're looking at a lot of different variables that are predictive of outcome. And so having AI overlaid on top of our modeling applications gives us the benefit of larger data sets to assess and to do them very, very quickly.
What organizational principles or culture have you built to keep analytics rigorous versus, guesswork dressed up as dashboards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not sure that we've fully nailed that. I think one of the things I challenge our teams to do is make sure that the reporting that we're delivering back to clients is not just visually engaging, because clients love to see pretty pictures and charts and graphs, and we do that, but it's meaningful. It's not just measurement for measurement's sake. It's how do we test and learn and be able to take appropriate next steps off of the analytics and the reporting that we're able to provide. So from our sake, we're constantly challenging ourselves. We have moved to now using the benefit of putting data in the cloud allows us to have the storage of much larger data sets, access that data much more easily, pull it down, or some subset of the data, pull it down and be able to put it into a model or analyze it. So for example, we now have a client that says, look, if I recognize that my target audience I want to go after is African-American women and families with kids making over $100,000, we can find those data sets. If we don't have them internally, externally, we can. You can import them very quickly. You can then assess and analyze that data, build a predictive model, get a response back within a matter of hours, and come back to the client and say, if we want to find lookalike households and zip codes that you're targeting, we have an answer in half a day. And now they know, okay, what's the scale of a campaign so that I can then develop an appropriate budget to determine, depending upon the channels that I'm going to deploy.
Well, I'm not a marketing guy, I'm just an AI guy, but marketing, what I do know is marketing is no longer just being creative and reach. The frontier now is automated insights, letting data drive decisions, not just gut calls. I want to hear how RMG is walking that frontier. So which marketing or campaign processes at RMG are already automated or AI enabled?
I would say the bulk of what we do, depending upon the status of the data that we're importing or working with when we start with the client. So we have quite a range, Carl, of clients. So we have some that I don't say this in a derogatory sense, that would define themselves as fairly immature in their marketing proficiency. And then we have some very advanced clients. So when you have a broad range like that, you have to understand that some have limited amounts of data that may not have a lot of demographics or psychographics or overlaid data on top of it. And they also have a limited reach and a limited budget. So coming back with a super sophisticated deployment strategy may not work for them. So we have to work with those, I'll call them less mature, less sophisticated clients who have limited data. And we're maybe just building a very simple lookalike clone model for them. Whereas others are looking to have much more sophisticated, where they've already been doing marketing for an extended period of time. They have been deploying across a variety of channels. They have response rates by channel. And so we have to build a much more sophisticated model or apply AI techniques to that data set to be able to then come back to them with predictive outcomes and analyzing response. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Well, where do you see the biggest opportunities for predictive modeling?
Well, I think for us, what our goal has been is really to kind of bifurcate our offering in two ways. The first is for that less mature audience, basically build something that would be a software as a service, right? A SaaS-based model that says RMG has ad technology that allows you to be able to de-anonymize your website visitor or to identify your in-person visitor using geoframing technology. And so while you may be less mature, we'll do all of the heavy lifting for you. We'll do all that legwork. We'll build those models. We'll deploy those technologies. And then we'll simply serve you back the results in a SaaS-based model where you can go in 24/7, sign into Tableau instance that's built on Snowflake, and you are very much, a self-serve model for us in terms of looking at that data, getting outcomes of your campaigns. A more sophisticated may want to do a lot of ad hoc analysis. They may want to build additional models. They maybe want to bifurcate some of the outcomes that they've achieved and then say, let's take a small subset of that audience, do A/B testing. And so they're going to require much more, I would call it, hands-on technology and assistance from RMG. So we're looking to build those two revenue channels, if you will, that really is self-sustaining based on utilizing AI and modeling applications in a SaaS-based delivery system. Hard word to say this morning. Whereas others we know will take time on our analytics team and be much more of a what I would call an enterprise type client.
Well, you talk about these technologies, as everyone knows, these technologies come with their own sets of challenges, unique sets of challenges. What data engineering or infrastructure challenges have you faced? Is it connecting disparate customer systems, keeping identity resolution clean, real-time pipelines, regulatory concerns? What kind of things?
Well, yeah, regulatory and compliance is a whole separate can of worms. We can talk about that as a separate question. But I think, and it is a major issue. I would say the first aspects of that in terms of that you raised certainly are issues for us, and that is, every client loves a pretty picture of their data. And so I think one of the things we constantly are striving to do is we happen to be delivering reporting via Tableau. We like that. We feel like it allows us to span the broad landscape of sophistication that our clients have. So those, as we talked about, those less sophisticated clients still can understand and interpret the data based on the charts and the graphs that we're delivering. Our power users, if you will, can also request a much greater level of analytics. And so we're able to cover all of that. The challenge has been, to your point, keeping that, managing that volume of data. We have a client that we're doing geoframing for, and in a month we may see 22 to 23 million devices go inside of our frame structure. And so that's a lot of data to manage. And the client is relying on us to make sure that, we're processing that data quickly. We're turning it around in a fast enough structure so that they can action against that data rather than get it 3 months after the fact and it's no longer relevant. Those I think are the biggest challenges for us, is managing the volume of data, delivering back reporting that's actionable, recognizing the volume, or in some cases the lower volume of data. So you have a very disparate set of interests on the part of the client and size of data that we're managing for those clients. And so finding a common reporting structure that allows everybody to get the most out of that is something that we're constantly challenging ourselves with.
Well, these models come with their own sets of challenges like drift and bias, because there's always inherent bias in some of these things. How do you guys validate and monitor your predicted models for drift and bias or overfitting in marketing?
Yeah, so I'm borderline capable of answering that question because I'm not the technologist or the analytics expert, but I can tell you one of the things that our team has found is that by having the number of years behind us, by having the volume of clients that we have, one of the things that we do is we're constantly testing ourselves to be able to make sure that the models aren't built with some amount of bias, and constantly looking to say, is that the appropriate model format to use, right? Is there, rather than do just a simple lookalike or a clone model, is there a nested analytics model that we should look at? Is there some sort of shade analysis that might yield a better result? So the client may never see that, because what we're going to deliver back to them is the model that has the best application for the goal and the outcome. But internally, we're trying to hold ourselves accountable to say, let's make sure that we're delivering back to them what is going to generate likely the greatest response, if that's what we're looking for, or build the greatest awareness within a reasonable outcome.
Well, as you guys expand, do you see RMG offering insights as a service or predictive tools that clients can self-serve?
Well, that's also a great question. I think that one of the things we're hoping to clearly identify these two delivery channels, like I mentioned, between being there as a software as a service, so that you pay a flat monthly rate and you really have to do very little. We're delivering everything back to you. For those clients that require greater ad hoc analysis, then I think that our team will be challenged to build a variety of different sets of analytics and models that are going to be relevant and generate the greatest ROI for those clients. I think that in general, where we want to be is recognize we don't want to put every square peg in a round hole, right? Every client's outcome isn't going to be generated by the same model that we build or the same approach that we build. And there are some clients that we recognize may not be a good fit for us, or more appropriate way to say that is we may not be a good fit for them, because what they need could be beyond our capabilities. Or on the less mature side, if we deliver back to you the models and the outcome and the data and you never action against that, it's probably not good dollars spent on your behalf. So making sure that we're walking a clear delineation between a relationship that's going to generate positive outcomes for both ourselves and our clients. The work that we do is relevant for them and they can action against that, and they'll be able to see benefit from that.
Well, once you move from boutique projects into scale, things like consistency of process, quality control, data governance, and tool standardization become major friction points. So let's kind of dig into that for a minute. What operational bottlenecks or capacity constraints are you guys experiencing now as RMG grows? Thinking about things like scaling your team, your analytics team, client onboarding, quality assurance, which is always a big one.
Well, all three of those, but certainly the first two. So I would tell you that the biggest challenge we face is making sure that we have the appropriate resources internally to manage the volume of data and the volume of clients that we have. Some of our clients are demanding, rightly so, to get response models back within 24 to 48 hours of initial drop of delivery of a campaign. And so our team has to be prepared to be able to do that. We have to have the tool set. So it's kind of working hand in glove there, Carl, to be quite honest. You need the bodies that know how to do what we're delivering. They need to be available. And then you need to be able to make sure that you've got the product and service in terms of what we're using from a technology analytics perspective that's performing at its best. I think that we're constantly challenging ourselves with that. We made a significant shift, a major CapEx investment in the fourth quarter of last year to move away from originally being in the Google Looker platform, which we absolutely loved, but we found that it had a lot of issues around data latency when you're trying to deliver data back to a client from a reporting perspective. And so we assessed what was available in the landscape. Do we look at BI? Do we look at Tableau? Do we look at a variety of other Domo and all these other options out there? We settled on Tableau because it just had the broadest adoption within the marketplace. It fit our needs. But now we're a year into that, and I'm questioning the team again, is do we need to relook at that? Is what we're delivering meeting the client expectations and our own expectations? Are we able to visualize for the client the true outcomes that we're able to achieve in analyzing the data? Is it representative from a visual perspective? And then just being able to manage that flow of data. Snowflake has been a great asset for us outside of the Google platform, not in any way, bad mouthing that. It's just that the Snowflake instance that we have has worked phenomenally, and it allows us then to push that data out to clients, daily, whereas in the past we had limitations to be able to do that. So long-winded answer to your question, I think we're constantly challenging ourselves. We've got to have the right people in-house to be able to manage the requirements that we have to deliver back the data, and then making sure that our clients are benefiting from the infrastructure and the platforms that we have in place and are representing that data to our best ability and to the technology's best ability.
Well, are there processes that still involve manual work and become a drag on the team? Like one that obviously comes to mind for me because every single one of my clients want to engage me to look at report generation. Obviously, that's a huge one, right? So there's
Yes.
always a lot of time saved there. But campaign setup, client databases, or dashboards. I mean, so what are some of those manual processes you guys are struggling with today?
Well, one of the things that we have, for example, is we have a very robust set of demographic and psychograph attributes that we're able to overlay on top of the client. So you're looking at close to 400 different attributes. When we engage with a client at the outset, some of the folks don't want that publicly available information. So an example of that would be voting records. Voting records is public information. A lot of our clients are like, I don't want to have that in my database. That's one example of, let's say, 100 different attributes out of 400 that the client might say, I don't want to receive that data. Well, now we've got to customize the data delivery and the way that we're examining all of that data, storing that data, and the difference between clients to make sure that we're not exporting out a match on something that they don't want. So there's a uniqueness to every one of our clients. That requires time and effort on our team's part to make sure that we are providing a specific set of client fields and records that are in line with their expectations and not just those that we automatically overlay on top of a file.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. And how do you guys maintain consistency and quality across your client engagements while allowing for that customization and addressing their unique client needs?
Well, we have some baseline things that have kind of been consistent with RMG always, and that is we either subscribe, license, or do outright purchase to about 400 different data partners from which we are purchasing and enhancing our data. That's done monthly. In some cases, there's more frequent instance of that, but that's done monthly. Things like NCOA, right? We do that every 30 days. So we're passing data back through the US postal system to check change of address so that as we're dealing with live data where our clients are either sending out direct mail campaigns or they're pushing out email campaigns, we're subscribing to a variety of sources to get that opt-in permission-based consent to be able to use and provide live emails that we think are primary. We can't guarantee that, but we believe they're primary. So we constantly have to be refreshing our data sets. And so when you've got 440 different sources, time consuming, that's a lot of data processing time, but we feel like it allows us to be able to make sure that if a client says, I want to action against a very defined audience within a 7-mile radius of a clinic location that I got to make sure that the data that we're delivering back is not somebody that's deceased, not somebody that's recently moved, not somebody that has closed an email account, So I've got to look at all of those different channels to ensure that what we're providing is good, valuable live data.
Well, what are some of your key metrics and where are you most nervous or exposed? And I'm thinking about things like retention, margin per client, model accuracy.
Well, in a lot of our industries, I mentioned earlier on that we pivoted in 2016 to work in the tourism business. We had worked in what I'll call more of the hospitality side. So we had worked with the big brands like Marriott and Hilton and Ritz-Carlton, Disney, more on the true hospitality side. We saw an opportunity in 2016. I'll use my home state as an example, the state of Virginia, that spends upwards of $40 million a year in building awareness for folks to come to Virginia because Virginia is for lovers. So we'd love to have you. But the state of Virginia never knows whether Carl or Jim step foot in the state of Virginia. And we found that that was truly amazing in this day and age that you're spending $40 million with no true ROI. Anybody from the state of Virginia, the Virginia Tourism Corporation, would probably be listening to this and say, oh, no, Jim, we can. Well, sure, they can to some degree, but they're using a lot of metrics which are not as specific as those which are available in the marketplace today. And they certainly can't de-anonymize that visitor. That's really the differentiator for RMG. So I think from our perspective, one of the things that we're focused on is making sure that what we can deliver back, what we believe are the true assets and the value, is ROI and return on ad spend. In the tourism sector, that's kind of the holy grail, if you will. For a lot of Fortune 500 companies, they've been measuring ROI and return on ad spend, ROAS, for a long time. But in the tourism sector, they have not. So for us, while a 12-month campaign breaks down into month by month and week by week, and you're measuring return on investment there, and you're just general response rates, and looking at other factors, click-through rates, while they're important, it's the big picture for us, and we try not to stray too far from that, recognizing that the client is paying us to improve that ROI. And we're trying to bring value by differentiating ourselves in the ability to be able to do that in industries, in some cases, where there has not been an ROI in the past.
Well, given my role, I always have to ask this question. If you had a fractional CIO or AI advisor partner, what one operational or system level improvement would you ask them to tackle first?
Well, I think the greatest challenge that we have, there's probably two answers to be honest. The first is, as I mentioned in one of your previous questions, I constantly challenge our team. We don't have a CIO per se by title. And so one of the things I challenge our team is, are the various platforms that we're using, the data visualization tools that we're using, the modeling techniques that we're using, are those and do they continue to be appropriate for the applications that we're using it? And is there something out there that's better? We always have to be asking that. We can't just rest on our laurels to say, yes, the company has a long history of success and we are generating great results for our clients, but we as an organization can't see what's over the next hill. And I think we have to constantly be saying, as something in our market changes, are we prepared to be able to adopt something new in the marketplace? So I would say first and foremost, that's the biggest issue. If we had a fractional CIO who came in, I would want to make sure that the technology that we're using is still, doesn't have to be cutting edge, but it's delivering at a good ROI for RMG. Excuse me. So that's the first part of that. I think the second part of that is just better understanding where is the market heading. And I don't know if this is necessarily a CIO question. You asked about compliance, and I said that's a whole different issue. Compliance and regulatory is something that's changing dynamically, literally day by day.
Exactly.
Not just in terms of what's happening at the state and federal level, but at the device manufacturer level. So as we're all consuming all this marketing and we're communicating, whether that's on handheld devices, laptops, desktops, what have you, all of that technology is changing. And so between Apple and Google and all the other manufacturers, they're trying to find different ways to be able to build in restrictive capabilities in terms of what we as marketers can gather about you and I while we're using the device. And so navigating that landscape, predicting where that may end up in the next year to 2 years is nearly impossible, but we need to be close to that to make sure that what we're offering in terms of what we believe is a real uniqueness in the marketplace is not something that we get caught completely unaware of something that may transpire, whether that's, again, in a regulatory environment or whether that's in a technology environment that impacts our data.
Well, it's not just the regulatory and compliance area that's changing day by day. It's the technology as well. I mean, every day a new AI model comes out, and there's just, the last time I looked, there was something like 18,000 different models out there that people have to choose from. So looking ahead, as the lines between marketing, predictive intelligence, and automated systems begin to blur, I'm curious where you see the evolution taking RMG and what new frontiers are you eyeing?
Yeah, that's something that kind of keeps me up at night, to be honest. I think that we have we have certainly probably dipped our toe in the AI water. We are not anywhere near as advanced as other companies. The thing I feel good about is, and I say this ignorant of specifically what my competitors are doing, I think we're all certainly to some degree entranced by what offers to us and where it may take us. I think in the short term, we're using it really for analyzing data at scale and the time that it would allow us to remove from some of the older technology that we have. So we want to continue to get better at that. I think in terms of what it will afford us in terms of predictive analytics, I know one of the things that may be of interest to a lot of folks is how does it impact things like content creation? Candidly, that scares me, to be quite honest. I think it's amazing, but it does scare me because I think finding voice and a voice being genuine is what sets successful marketers apart. And with AI today, I can read something and I can't tell you whether that's AI generated or that was written by a copywriter. Same thing with the design aspect. Where that leads, you and I won't be able to control, but I think that we'll have to wait and see how that ultimately impacts our business. So from our side, we're approaching it with caution at this point in time and understanding that it probably offers us a lot of time-saving opportunities, if for no other application than data analytics. But certainly we're recognizing that our clients have shown us examples of, I had AI write this outbound email campaign for me and create a whole series of 5 different creative treatments based on audience segments that I might want to deliver. And now I don't need to use my ad agency, or now I can be able to turn this around within 24 to 48 hours and
Right.
drop different campaigns. Yeah, all of that is absolutely amazing. And I think we're still trying to understand what that long term, whatever the definition of long term is anymore, Carl, it is on us. We're certainly very, very enthusiastic about what we're seeing, but recognizing that, we need to proceed with caution. I'm speaking from RMG's perspective.
Well, I mean, clearly AI is a disruptor in every industry, right? And
Yep.
I just
Yep.
think from a marketing perspective, all honesty, I mean, that's how you and I found each other, right? Was through a cold email campaign that I leveraged Apollo and instantly to do. So it's going to be a disruptor in your space. I would imagine that does keep you up at night.
It does. And we want to utilize best practice. And that doesn't mean that you don't, because we advocate on behalf of our clients, test and learn with all of your marketing campaigns. So as it relates to what we're doing, model development, customer segmentation, we'd love to test and learn with AI as well. If it can make us more effective, if it can, do our work faster, then all that's fantastic. Ultimately, that has a trickle down in terms of operating expense, which is something that owners are always concerned about. And so we're watching, we're listening, and I think trying to understand where disruptive technology like that has an application in terms of not just for RMG as a company, but in the industries in which we serve.
Right. And I think that the way you guys are approaching it, really digging into it, taking a disciplined approach and looking at it, I think that's the right way to do it. We're in a position where anybody can pick things up, right? And I think there's going to be 2 types of companies, the way I see it: those who adopt AI and leverage it as an assistant to enhance their day-to-day workforce and work, and those who don't, who will probably be left by the wayside. So I think that you guys' cautious approach is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to think that we're still around after 39 years for good reasons.
Right.
That we've had good stewards of the company over the years. I'm fortunate to be in that position today, and we will, always be watching and listening and adopting whatever makes the most sense for us. I don't know that, I used to have years and years ago, I had a colleague who used to say there's a difference between the cutting edge and the bleeding edge. We're happy to walk on the cutting edge. We just don't want to get involved in the bleeding edge.
It's a good way to put it. Well, how do you want RMG to evolve over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think that to us, the great unknown is the regulatory environment and what happens with compliance. Because if we as a provider in the space aren't keeping up with that, we're clearly falling behind. And honestly, as we talked about, it changes day to day. Managing, for example, California's new drop system that they've unveiled. we've got to be on top of that and make sure as we advise our clients who are marketing, because we're not marketers, our clients are the marketers. And so we have to be in a position to understand what's happening in the marketplace and the best thing to advise our clients in terms of next steps and be fully aware of, what the regulations require. That is the biggest unknown, I think, for us that could change by, the federal government could mandate for some reason, especially in this current administration environment, what may transpire and wake up one morning and privacy laws have changed and there's no such thing as being able to capture that information any longer.
Right.
So we hope that doesn't happen in the short term, but we need to keep our finger on the pulse of what's occurring. I think we are going to continue to challenge ourselves as an organization to be able to deliver back meaningful results for our clients that allow them to analyze and assess the performance of their marketing campaigns. That's been our sweet spot, will continue to be our sweet spot. How we do that, what technology we use will continue to evolve, but we hold ourselves accountable that as long as we can drive great returns for our clients on their campaigns, we like to think that maybe it's not another 39 years, but we'll be around for at some point in time. And who knows what, one never knows with the private equity landscape and acquisitions that occur in our industry. We've enjoyed being independent. As I said, we sold at one point back in 1999 and restarted again as an independent a number of years later. So I can't predict what the future holds as much as analytics will allow us to do so. But we're simply going to kind of stick to what has worked for all of these years for us and deliver great results for the client.
It's not broke, don't fix it.
Amen.
Well, which emerging technologies excite you the most from a marketing perspective? And the things I'm thinking about are like real-time decisioning, generative AI for creatives, federated data models, multimodal signals. What excites you the most?
Well, I'm not as well versed in some of those as others. I think generative AI from a creative perspective, we touched on briefly before, but I find that fascinating. And I'm glad I don't own that general ad agency anymore, because I think that if I were to look at something where I might become outdated, that's what scares me the most. Now, the agencies will certainly embrace it and they will say that will reduce our overall cost and expense. But the model, as I said, in an ad agency is based on the number of hours that you have to be able to build the client. So by doing something quicker and faster is great, but I don't know how that's going to change what their revenue structure looks like. I find it fascinating. We will definitely use it. We're going to apply that. We do a limited amount of creative, Carl, for our clients. We have some, as I talked about, some of those less sophisticated, less mature clients who don't have an agency of record, don't have in-house agency services. And so we will use those, deploying our own in-house art directives and copywriters to utilize those resources, which are going to allow us to be better at developing creative concepts and copywriting that resonates more so, that generates more positive results for us. So I think of all the things that we will embrace and certainly explore more heavily than others, I think that generative AI is absolutely one that is of a high interest for us.
Well, how do you see client expectations changing? Do you think they'll demand adaptive AI-powered campaigns in real time? I'm sure over the last 39 years, 38 years, you guys have seen a lot of change. So how do you see those expectations changing?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think, yes, to your question, I think that they will demand that their partners are utilizing those types of not just best practice, but to some degree, cutting edge technologies. I think where the pressures are going to be on folks such as ourselves is, I remember, and it's going to show my age more than anything else, there used to be back in the direct mail days, something we called doubling day. And it was approximately 10 days after you drop mail, at which point that typically you reach the zenith of your response rate. And then it was going to start coming down from there. And our clients would say, okay, how can we predict what the overall response rate is going to be? But it took us 10 days to get to that. Can you imagine in this day and age, you drop a fully automated campaign across multiple channels and tell the client, I'll get back to you with some initial results in 10 days? I mean, that ain't going to work. And so I think that's the biggest change for us, is that with all of the technology that exists and the fact that we're almost all of the analytics as well as the advertising itself we're deploying is digitally based. They want to know answers in 12 hours or less, right? They want an initial read. In 24 hours, you better have benchmarks across all the markets that you delivered and all the different segments into which you did deliver that advertising. So that's changed. And so that demand requires that our team almost feel like you've got to be working 24/7 in terms of, if you send a campaign that doesn't drop until 5 p.m. today and the client expects to have initial reads by 5 p.m. tomorrow, you have a limited window to be able to prepare all those analytics and deliver back reports. So I think there's a little bit of education on the part of RMG with our clients, is to understand, yes, we can get some initial reads, but let's not make definitive action or take, different dramatic change of course as a result of what we see in 12 to 24 hours of response.
That's where some of those AI agents help out, right? Because they do work 7 by 20.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I know what the answer is going to be before I ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What constraints or risk are you watching? Is it data privacy regulation? Is it talent? Is it capital? Probably all of the above.
Well, so I'll use my son as a great example. So he's a senior in college, and some of the things that he's doing in his classes I never even heard of before. So the great opportunity that it presents to us is as the market changes, as the technology is advanced, I think the younger generation, the kids coming out of school, the kids that are currently working in market, but working with a lot of these tools and assets that we've talked about, have an understanding of that. And old people like me simply look to identify those folks. That I think is, excuse me, overall a net positive for us as a company and for the industry as a whole. The regulatory side, though, from both the compliance perspective side as well as from the technology side, as you talked about, one of the things that we used to do in the old days is, I'm going to sound like a dinosaur, is you didn't really have to look at making significant CapEx changes out in your platforms and infrastructure from a data perspective, but once every couple of years. Mm-hmm. Now, technology is changing so fast, as I mentioned. We looked at it a year ago, but I challenged our team to look at it again in just 12 months. So we have to make sure that what we're using in terms of reporting tools and platforms are still the best based on what's out there. So there's a lot of things that we have to take into account as we assess the best way that we can deliver results to our clients. Do we have the best tools internally? As we advise our clients, can we tell you, is it okay to mail into California or Colorado or Virginia? What are the 14 states with various levels of compliance that are different from others? What happens if someone raises their hand and requests information? Or how do we manage opt-outs and unsubscribes and all of those? So it seems like it never ends, but those are the things that I think are ones that we very closely have our eye on and trying to monitor. So both from the employee and recruiting the right person that comes with a set of capabilities right off the bat that we don't have to teach you, and their adoption skills at what we've been doing are at the highest level, and then also managing what's happening in the marketplace that impacts our clients.
If you could launch a bold new product or vertical tomorrow with no constraints, what would it be for RMG?
Wow. One of the things I would love to create is some sort of an industry-wide compliance tool which would allow us to be able to measure and track in the tourism space, because we've got so many states. We obviously have 50 states, we have territories. There are 10,000 what we call destination marketing organizations in the tourism industry. That's a lot of folks of varying sizes. Visit Las Vegas, visit LA, visit Chicago are the big ones, but then you've got some really, really small ones from very small destinations that are still staffed and still doing marketing and advertising and still want everybody to know you're out there. What I'd love to do is create an industry-wide compliance tool that allowed all of us to be able to access that data of consumers in some way. And I don't know what that looks like, but you asked me, kind of off the cuff to think about that. Mm-hmm. I'd love to be able to create a tool that allowed us to be able to track those individual households in a normative data file which was permission based. And that's the challenge that all of us face, right? Is what's permission based and what's not. You get your hand slapped or you get some massive fines if you're not following that compliance. How do we make that easier? That would be maybe that exists and I don't know about it, but that would be, as you said, if there were no objects to creating it, because that's probably not an inexpensive endeavor, that's where I would go.
Right. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second. If there's one piece of advice you'd give marketing leaders or C-level executives about becoming truly insight driven, and I mean beyond vanity metrics and dashboards, what would it be?
Gosh, well, I think that one of the things I've tried to do, Carl, is be a student of the marketing industry since the time I got into it. So my background, I didn't take marketing classes in college. The computer programming classes I took back in the late 1980s don't even exist anymore, right? Nobody uses COBOL. That's what I learned. I have tried to be a student of the industry to understand as marketing has changed, as the channels have proliferated, as various forms of response have changed. I've tried to keep up with that. And I would say that to me has hopefully allowed me as a leader to understand and be able to eloquently, as best I can, deliver what the value proposition is to RMG for our clients and to our employees to be able to help set a vision for what we need to do as it relates to delivering value assets to our clients to get better results from their marketing campaign. So just, I wouldn't call myself a voracious reader, but I do try to balance my reading with fun reading, but then also business reading. And I try to keep up with a variety of resources. I probably get close to well over a dozen emails every day, which are like smart briefs of different things that are happening in various industries and across technology. And some of them I have more time to read than others, and some I set aside and I get to them on a Saturday or Sunday. But just trying to keep up with the changes in the industry and be at least have the ability to be somewhat intelligent enough to have a conversation about it. But you've stressed my limits today, Carl. I just want you to know that. Hopefully I haven't embarrassed myself.
No, you've done great. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time and insight. I really appreciate the blend of passion, pragmatism, and rigor you bring to the data-driven marketing. For our listeners, if you're looking to move from guesswork to foresight, from dashboards to decision systems, Jim's work offers a great model. Jim, if folks want to learn more, what's the best way for them to reach out to you or RMG?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. We have obviously a website, www.rmg, as in Robert Mary George USA.com. We have and maintain a very active blog there where we're talking about what are some of the critical things that are happening in various industries, so folks can get updates from our perspective on what's going on there. We also have a YouTube page where we've been fortunate enough, between the type of podcasts and videos that we've structured and testimonials from our clients and interviews with our clients, you can get a great understanding of what RMG is, what we do, who we've worked with, and I think those are probably the primary resources to use, our website and our YouTube page.
Well, perfect. And if your organization needs help bridging strategy, automation, and systems at the C level, that's exactly what we do at Proteligen. Reach out anytime. Until next time, ask better questions, build smarter systems, and stay on the edge of intelligence. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Carl.